When I asked about the house my son bought with my $380,000, his wife smiled like she was telling me the weather. "We moved in 3 months ago," she said. Then she took a sip of her wine. "You weren't on the guest list." I didn't react right away. You know that strange, hollow silence that hits your ears when something is so wrong your brain refuses to process it? That was me. Just sitting there at their old rental townhouse in Plano, Texas, staring at the beige wall behind her like maybe the paint would explain what she meant. 3 months ago. Guest list. My money. My name's David. I'm 63 years old. Retired mechanical contractor. Divorced since 2004. One son. Daniel. He's 34. Everything I did after that divorce was for that boy. I worked double shifts. Took side contracts. Flipped 2 foreclosures during the 2008 crash when everyone else was running scared. I ate tuna sandwiches and drove a 2009 Ford F-150 with 212,000 miles because I believed in one thing. You build something for your kid so he doesn't have to start from zero. So when Daniel called me last year, voice tight but hopeful, saying, "Dad, we found a place, but the down payment's steep. I don't want to miss it." I didn't hesitate. "How much?" There was a pause. $380,000. It wasn't all I had, but it was most of my liquid savings. The rest was tied up in a modest IRA and a rental property I'd held onto outside Denton. "Is it a good house?" I asked. "It's perfect," he said. "For bedrooms. Good school district. Investment." "Dad. Investment." I wired the money within 48 hours. No contract. Nulla. No paperwork. Just trust. You don't ask your son for paperwork. Fast forward 9 months. I'd heard very little about the house. Anytime I asked Daniel about closing, renovations, move-in dates, he'd get vague. Still finalizing things. Paperwork delays. Inspection stuff. I didn't push. Maybe that was my mistake. Then last Sunday, I stopped by unannounced. I was bringing over my old smoker grill. Daniel loved brisket as a kid. I figured new house, new memories. But I pulled into the driveway of the rental. Still there. Same cracked basketball hoop. Same dying shrubs. Daniel wasn't home. His wife, Lauren, opened the door. Lauren is polished. Always polished. The kind of woman who speaks softly but with a little blade tucked behind her words. "Daniel's out," she said. "That's fine," I told her. "I just wanted to talk about the house. When do I get to see it?" And that's when she said it. "We moved in 3 months ago." I blinked. "I'm sorry." "We've been in the new place since March." She adjusted her Apple Watch like she was bored. "It was a small housewarming. Immediate circle. Immediate circle." "I wasn't invited?" I asked. She shrugged. Actually shrugged. "You weren't on the guest list." Guest list. Like I was some coworker who forgot to RSVP. Now here's the part that hurt. It wasn't the money. It wasn't even the exclusion. It was the realization that my son didn't correct her. He walked in mid-conversation. Heard the last sentence. Saw my face. He didn't say, "Lauren, that's not funny." He didn't say, "Dad, that's not what she meant." He just stood there, quiet. I looked at him. "Daniel." He rubbed his neck. Avoided eye contact. "It was complicated, Dad. Complicated." I drove home that night with the smoker still in my truck bed. I didn't call. I didn't yell. I didn't send a text. I sat at my kitchen table. The same oak table Daniel used to do homework on. The same one where I explained compound interest when he was 15. $380,000. I pulled up my bank app. Confirmed the wire transfer. October 14th. 10:32 a.m. Recipient. Daniel Harris. No memo. Just love. A week later, my phone rang. Lauren. I let it go to voicemail. She called again. I answered. "Hello." Her voice sounded different. Tighter. "David. The mortgage and utilities are stacking up. Daniel said you might be sending the next transfer?" "Next transfer?" "I'm sorry." "For property taxes and escrow adjustments. We assumed you'd help until things stabilize." "Assumed." "You assumed." Silence. Then she said it. The bills are due. I leaned back in my chair and stared at the ceiling fan spinning slowly above me. For a second, I almost laughed. They moved into a house I hadn't seen. Didn't invite me. Told me I wasn't on the guest list. And now I was apparently on the payroll. Did you send the money? She asked. That's when something inside me shifted. It wasn't rage. Rage is hot. This was cold. Clear. I smiled. And I said very calmly, "No." Silence. Then I added, "I didn't." She started to speak, but I continued. "Before I send another $1, I'd like to see the deed." Dead air. "The deed?" she repeated. "Yes," I said. "The ownership documents. I'm curious how my $380,000 was structured." She hung up. Didn't even say goodbye. That night I didn't sleep much. I replayed everything. The vague updates. The lack of invitation. The absence of gratitude. The entitlement in her voice. I'm not a suspicious man by nature, but I built a business from scratch. I know when numbers don't add up. So I started asking quiet questions. Property records in Collin County are public. Took me 15 minutes online. I typed in the address Daniel once mentioned months ago. There it was. 4,200 square feet. Gated community. Purchased February 3rd. Purchase price, $1.1 million. Buyer, Lauren Mitchell. Only Lauren. No Daniel. No David. I stared at the screen for a long time. Only Lauren. My son wasn't even on the title. I let out a short, sharp snort. $380,000. And my son didn't own a single brick. That's when I realized something else. This wasn't just emotional betrayal. It was strategic. Calculated. Someone had structured this. And my son either went along with it or didn't understand it. Both possibilities hurt. But one of them was unforgivable. I closed my laptop. Poured myself a glass of bourbon. Not the cheap kind. The one I save for decisions. I wasn't going to yell. I wasn't going to beg for respect. And I definitely wasn't sending another $1. If they wanted strategy, they were about to meet mine. I didn't confront them. That's what they expected. A hurt father. A loud argument. A messy emotional scene they could dismiss as Dad being dramatic. Instead, I made coffee. Black. No sugar. And I started building a timeline. October 14th, $380,000 wired to Daniel. February 3rd, house purchased. Buyer, Lauren Mitchell. March, they move in. No invitation. Last week, the bills are due. I pulled my wire confirmation again. Recipient name, Daniel Harris. Receiving bank, Lone Star Credit Union. Reference, none. No documentation tying that money to a gift. No memo stating it was unconditional. No letter signed. That mattered. Because in Texas, large financial transfers without written clarification can be interpreted in more than one way. Gift, loan, constructive trust. I'm not a lawyer, but I'm not naive either. And I've seen enough contractor disputes to know one thing. Paper beats emotion every time. The next morning, I called someone I hadn't spoken to in 5 years. Mark Ellison. We used to bid against each other on commercial jobs. Later, we partnered on a school renovation project that nearly bankrupted both of us until we caught the subcontractor cooking the books. Mark doesn't scare easily. Now he's an attorney. Real estate litigation. He answered on the second ring. David? You dead? Not yet, I said. Got a minute? Always for you. We met at a diner off Highway 75. Neutral ground. Smells like bacon and old coffee. Safe. I laid it out. Every detail. No drama. Just facts. When I finished, Mark leaned back in the booth and whistled low. She put the house solely in her name? Yes. And your son signed off on that? Apparently. He drummed his fingers on the table. Did you ever state in writing that the $380,000 was a gift? No. Did you receive a promissory note? No. Did they send you anything referencing gift for tax purposes? No. He smiled. Not a friendly smile. That's in. Now, before you think I was sharpening knives, let me be clear. I didn't want to destroy my son. I wanted clarity. I wanted fairness. But something else bothered me. Why was Daniel not on the deed? A married couple buying a $1.1 million house with one spouse solely listed? That's unusual. Unless there was something protective about that structure. Mark must have seen the thought cross my face. You think this was Lauren's idea? I don't know, I said honestly. But she was the one asking for more money. He nodded slowly. Could be asset shielding. From who? He shrugged. Creditors. Future divorce. Taxes. Control. Control. That word hit harder than leverage. I went home and pulled every text thread I had with Daniel over the last year. Screenshots. Archived emails. There were phrases that stood out now. Lauren's handling paperwork. She says it's more efficient this way. Don't worry about the details, Dad. Don't worry about the details. I almost laughed. Details are where people hide things. 3 days later, Mark called me. I dug deeper, he said. Property records show the mortgage lender required proof of funds. Your $380,000 was listed as borrower contribution. Borrower? I asked. Lauren. Sole borrower. I went silent. That means, Mark continued, your money was represented to the bank as her capital, not Daniel's, not joint, hers. So she leveraged my money to strengthen her financial profile. And now she wanted more. I let out a short snort. Bold. Very bold. But here's where the story twists. Mark wasn't done. There's something else. Go on. There was a post-closing adjustment document filed 2 weeks after purchase. Minor amendment. But it adds a clause. No third-party financial interest exists in this property. My grip tightened on the phone. No third-party financial interest. Correct. So legally, I said slowly, they declared that no one else has claim. Exactly. My mind replayed the voicemail again. The bills are due. I realized something then. They weren't just careless. They were confident. Confident I wouldn't check. Confident I wouldn't understand. Confident that I was just that, a wallet with feelings. That night I drove by the house. Didn't stop. Just passed slowly. Gated community. Brick columns. Security cameras. Perfect landscaping. Lights on in the upstairs bedroom. I imagined Daniel inside. Watching TV. Maybe unaware of the legal architecture wrapped around him. Or maybe fully aware. That uncertainty hurt more than anger ever could. The next morning I met Mark again. What are my options? I asked. He folded his hands. You could pursue civil action for unjust enrichment or misrepresentation. You could file a notice of claim asserting equitable interest. That would cloud the title. Cloud the title. Meaning they couldn't refinance. Couldn't sell. Couldn't leverage equity without resolving my claim. Strategic pressure. But, he added, this isn't just legal. It's family. So you need to decide what you want. I stared at the legal pad in front of me. What did I want? An apology? Ownership share? Accountability? Or just to stop being treated like a silent ATM? Then my phone buzzed. Daniel. I let it ring twice before answering. Dad. His voice sounded strained. Lauren said you asked about the deed. I did. Silence. You don't trust us? He asked. Trust. I almost smiled at the irony. Daniel, I said calmly, why aren't you on the title? Long pause. It was easier this way. For who? Another pause. For the lender. I knew that wasn't true. Mark had already clarified. Daniel, I said quietly, did you tell the bank my money was a gift? He didn't answer immediately. When he finally spoke, his voice was smaller. That's what Lauren said we had to do. There it was. A crack in the foundation. I ended the call politely. No shouting. No accusations. Just, I need some time to think. Because here's the thing about betrayal. The first cut is emotional. The second is financial. But the third? The third is when you realize someone believed you were too soft to fight back. That's the one that changes you. I met Mark one final time that week. I'm not filing yet, I said. But prepare the paperwork. He nodded. What's the strategy? I smiled. They think I'll either explode or comply. And I'm going to do neither. He leaned forward. David, what are you planning? I took a slow breath. First, I'm going to let them feel pressure. How? I'm going to do exactly what she asked. Mark blinked. You're sending the money? I shook my head.
No.
I smiled again. I'm sending something else. Lauren called again on Friday. Not once. 3 times. I let it go to voicemail each time. The third message was sharper. David, we really need to resolve this. The escrow shortage notice came in. If we don't cover it, the lender adjusts the payment. Daniel is stressed. Daniel is stressed. That was the lever she chose. Not we appreciate your help. Not can we talk. Stress. Bills. Urgency. I sat at my desk, phone in hand, and felt something strange. Not anger. Clarity. Saturday morning, I drove to Mark's office. He had the documents ready. A notice of equitable interest drafted but not filed. A civil demand letter prepared but unsigned. Clean. Professional. Cold. You sure about this? Mark asked. I'm sure about one thing, I said. No more assumptions. He slid another paper across the desk. A formal loan agreement template. Date it back to October? He asked. I shook my head. No games. If this goes forward, it's forward. He nodded. We spent 2 hours reviewing language. $380,000 principal. 3% interest below market. Repayment schedule beginning immediately. Security interest to be recorded against the property. Security interest. In plain English, if they defaulted, I could force a sale. My own son. I felt that weight. I won't pretend I didn't. But then I remembered the deed. No third-party financial interest exists. They already erased me once. That afternoon, I drove to the gated community. This time I stopped, pressed the call box. Lauren answered. Yes, it's David. Pause. The gate clicked open. The house was impressive, I'll give them that. White brick, black trim, 4-car garage. The kind of place you see in real estate brochures under executive living. Daniel opened the door before I knocked. He looked tired. Dad.
Son.
Lauren stood behind him. Perfect posture. Perfect hair. Slight tension around the eyes. Come in, she said. I stepped into a house partly built with my money. Marble floors. Open staircase. The smell of new paint and expensive candles. No family photos of me anywhere. Interesting detail. We sat at the kitchen island. No small talk. Lauren went first. David, we don't understand why you're making this difficult. Difficult. I set a manila envelope on the counter. I'm not, I said calmly.
I'm clarifying.
Daniel shifted in his seat. What's that? Documentation. Lauren didn't touch it. What kind? The kind that explains what $380,000 is. Silence. I looked at my son. Daniel, when I wired that money, what did you believe it was? He swallowed. A gift. Did I say that? You didn't say it wasn't. There it was. Assumption. Lauren finally reached for the envelope. Opened it. Skimmed the first page. Her expression changed. This is a loan agreement. Yes. With interest. 3%. That's ridiculous, she said. I raised an eyebrow. Lower than your mortgage rate. Daniel rubbed his face. Dad. We already structured everything as a gift. Yes, I said. I saw the bank filings. Lauren's head snapped up. You checked public records? I did. Her jaw tightened. That's invasive. I almost laughed. Invasive is telling a lender no third-party interest exists when $380,000 came from a third party. Silence slammed into the room. Daniel looked between us like a tennis spectator at Wimbledon. Lauren regained composure quickly. I'll give her that. This is unnecessary, she said smoothly. We're family. Exactly, I replied. Family doesn't Lauren's lips thinned. Third finger. Option 3. I file notice of equitable interest Monday morning. Silence. You could hear the refrigerator hum. Daniel spoke first. Dad, why are you doing this? That question hurt. I looked at him for a long moment. Because when I drove by here 3 months ago and didn't even know you lived here, I realized something. He stared at the marble countertop. I realized I funded a house I wasn't allowed to enter. Lauren snapped. That's dramatic. No, I said quietly. It's factual. Here's where the twist came. Lauren laughed. Actually laughed. You don't understand something, she said. Oh, the house is protected. Protected from what? From exactly this kind of interference. I tilted my head. How so? She smiled. It's held in a trust. Interesting. Mark hadn't mentioned that. I kept my face neutral. A revocable living trust, she continued. Established before closing.
I'm trustee.
Daniel's eyes widened slightly. That part may have been new information to him too. Trust. Layered structure. Clever. But not bulletproof. I reached into my jacket and pulled out a second envelope. Thicker. Lauren's smile faded. What's that? Preliminary draft of a petition for unjust enrichment and fraudulent misrepresentation. Daniel looked pale. If filed, I continued calmly, the court can compel discovery, full financial review, bank communications, mortgage application disclosures. Lauren didn't blink, but her fingers tightened on the paper. And if any statement made to the lender was materially false, I added, that becomes a different conversation entirely. Now the air changed, because this wasn't about family drama anymore. This was about potential federal scrutiny. Daniel finally looked at his wife. Lauren, what did we sign? She snapped back. Nothing illegal. I didn't respond. Silence can be louder than accusations. 10 seconds. 20. 30. Lauren broke first. What do you want? She asked flatly. There it was. Not what's fair. Not how do we fix this. What do you want? I smiled. I want what I invested. Daniel whispered. Dad. I held up a hand gently. I don't want your house. I don't want your marriage. I want acknowledgement. Lauren exhaled sharply. And if we refuse? I met her gaze steadily. Then Monday morning becomes paperwork. They asked for 48 hours. I gave it. Sunday night, Daniel called me alone. Not Lauren. Just him. Dad. Yeah. I didn't know about the trust structure until after closing. I believed him. She said it was safer. In case something ever happened. Something like what? Like divorce. There it was. Asset shielding. Not from creditors. From him. I closed my eyes briefly. Daniel, do you own anything in that house? Silence.
No.
And you told me it was an investment. Another silence. I thought it was. Monday morning, 8:12 a.m. Mark's phone buzzed. Email. Signed document attached. They chose option 1. Loan agreement executed. Notarized. Automatic payment scheduled. Plus something I didn't expect. A separate addendum. It granted Daniel a 50% beneficial interest in the trust going forward. I snorted when I read that. Lauren wasn't stupid. She realized transparency was cheaper than litigation. I didn't file anything. I didn't yell. I didn't celebrate. I simply received the first transfer 2 months later. On time. Principal plus interest. Clean. Professional. Cold. The first payment hit my account on April 1st. I actually checked twice. $7,243.18. Principal and interest. On time. No message attached. No thanks, Dad.
No emoji.
Just numbers. I stared at the screen for a long moment. $380,000 had turned from gift into obligation overnight. Felt strange. Not victorious. Just balanced. For the next 3 months, payments arrived like clockwork. No missed deadlines.
No excuses.
No late-night stress calls. Lauren stopped calling entirely. Daniel called once a week. Short conversations at first. Awkward. How's your week? Fine. Work good. Yeah. Like we were relearning how to speak. Then something interesting happened. Around month 4, Daniel asked if he could stop by. Alone. I told him to come over Saturday afternoon. He showed up in jeans and an old college hoodie. No polished wife. No tension-filled kitchen island. Just my son standing on my porch like he used to when he came home from school. We sat at the same oak table. The one from part 1. He looked thinner. You ever regret it? He asked. Regret what? Making it alone. I considered the question carefully. No, I said. I regret not making it clear from the beginning. He nodded slowly. She's upset, he admitted. I assumed. She thinks you threatened us. I smiled faintly. I didn't threaten. I documented. That made him snort a little. First genuine sound of humor since this started. Then he said something that surprised me. She refinanced. My eyes lifted. When? Last month. And? She had to disclose the loan agreement. Of course she did. When the lender reviewed the trust structure, he continued, they required an amendment. I'm officially co-trustee now. There it was. Accountability ripples. I didn't have to force it. Transparency did. Daniel rubbed his hands together. I didn't understand what was happening before, he said quietly. I just trusted her. That stung. But not the way you think. Because I realized something uncomfortable. He trusted her the way I trusted him. Blind spots run in families. The bigger consequence came later. Around month 7, Daniel called me again. Different tone. Dad, we're separating. I didn't react immediately. Temporary? I asked. I don't know. He sounded tired in a deeper way. It wasn't just the house, he said. There were other things. Accounts I didn't have access to. Decisions made without me. Control. That word again. The house wasn't the root. It was a symptom. Now here's where people expect fireworks. Divorce drama. Courtroom chaos. That's not what happened. Because once documentation existed, once everything was on paper, power shifted. Lauren couldn't claim the house was solely hers without acknowledging the loan. She couldn't leverage equity without Daniel's co-trustee signature. She couldn't rewrite financial history quietly. Strategy doesn't scream. Constrains. One evening, about 9 months after the envelope incident, Lauren called me. First time since the confrontation. Her voice was measured. David, I'd like to resolve the outstanding balance in full. That caught my attention. In full? Yes. How? We're selling. There it was. Market had appreciated. Interest rates shifting. Timing made sense. What's the listing price? I asked. 1.34. A solid gain from 1.1 million. After fees and closing costs, they'd still clear well. And Daniel? I asked. He'll receive his share. For the first time since I met her, she sounded tired. Not defeated. Just aware. The house sold within 3 weeks. My loan was repaid in full at closing. Principal. Accrued interest. Wire confirmation sent same day. I poured myself that same bourbon again. Not to celebrate her loss. To mark closure. Daniel moved into a smaller townhouse. On his own. He came over one Sunday with a folder. Inside was a check. Not required. Not part of the loan. What's this? I asked. Interest you could have charged but didn't, he said. I looked at him. You don't owe me that. I know. He shrugged slightly. But I want to. I didn't cash it. Still haven't. It sits in my desk drawer. Not as leverage. As reminder. People sometimes ask me, friends who heard bits of the story, if I feel bad about how it unfolded. Here's the honest answer. I don't feel bad. I feel awake. Because the real betrayal wasn't the title structure. It wasn't even the guest list comment. It was the assumption that I would remain passive. That I would trade dignity for access. That I'd fund a future I wasn't allowed to enter. That's the quiet kind of disrespect that grows if you let it. Lauren didn't lose everything. She walked away with profit from the sale. Daniel didn't lose everything. He gained clarity. That might be the most valuable inheritance I've given him. A few months ago, he said something that stuck with me. Dad, when Lauren said you weren't on the guest list, I should have said something. I looked at him across the patio. You didn't, I said gently. I know. He wasn't defending himself, just acknowledging. That moment, he continued, told me something was off. I just ignored it. I nodded. Most people ignore the first red flag, I said. It's easier than conflict. He gave a small, embarrassed snort. Yeah, turns out conflict is cheaper. Smart kid. As for Lauren, I haven't seen her since the closing.
No dramatic showdown. No shouting.
Just distance. And here's the part that might surprise you. I don't hate her. I don't even think she set out to be a villain in some cartoon sense. She wanted control, security, protection. She structured the house to ensure she'd never be vulnerable. The problem wasn't strategy. The problem was erasing people in the process. There's a difference between protecting yourself and exploiting trust. One builds stability. The other builds resentment. I've replayed that phone call in my mind more than once. The bills are due. If I'd reacted emotionally, if I'd sent another transfer out of guilt or fear of losing access to my son, this story would have gone differently. The house would have grown. My role would have shrunk. And the next time I asked a question, maybe I wouldn't even get the courtesy of guest list. Instead, I paused. I checked records. I asked professionals. I built a position before I spoke. That's the shift. From passive to active. From emotional to strategic. Here's something I learned at 63 that I wish I understood at 33. Love without boundaries becomes subsidy. Trust without documentation becomes vulnerability. And silence in the face of disrespect becomes permission. That sounds harsh. It isn't. It's practical. People hear revenge story and expect fire. What I learned is that cold revenge doesn't burn. It freezes. It restricts. It moves through paperwork and policy instead of screaming. It protects your future instead of punishing someone's past. The goal was never to hurt my son. The goal was to stop being treated like an invisible investor. A few weeks ago, Daniel asked if I'd consider going in with him on a small rental property. Different city, different scale, much smaller number. I looked at him carefully. What's the structure? I asked. He smiled. LLC. Operating agreement drafted before money moves. I laughed. Now you're thinking. We're still reviewing it. And this time, my name will be on everything. If you're reading this and you've ever wired money to family without clarity, I'm not judging you. I did it too. We do it because we love. But here's the uncomfortable truth. Love does not replace contracts. Good intentions do not override legal structure. And being a parent does not require you to be financially blind. The house I wasn't invited to, it's owned by someone else now. Different family, different story. And I don't feel a thing when I drive past that neighborhood. Not anger, not regret, just indifference. That's how you know you handled it right. The best revenge wasn't forcing a sale. It wasn't threatening court. It wasn't humiliating anyone. It was standing up calmly with documents in hand and saying,
No.
Then following that no with structure. $380,000 taught me something priceless. Self-preservation is not selfish. Boundaries are not betrayal. And sometimes the most powerful sentence in the room is delivered with a smile. I didn't. You. If you ever find yourself not on the guest list of something you helped build, don't shout. Don't beg. Don't wire another dollar. Pause. Document.
Decide.
Because the best revenge is living well, protected, and fully awake.